you already, each of you have some interest in that or you wouldn't be here today. So I think what I'm hoping is in this extraordinary time when parents are trying to do so much, teachers are trying to do so much, it's a very, very challenging time. One of the things we can do that's most healing for all of us is to incorporate nature into our daily lives. And so part of what I thought would be helpful today, again, is to maybe affirm even more what you're already interested in doing. And so I'll share some slides that offer some of the most current evidence. So in leaving the call today, as time goes on, I want you to feel even more confidence in the value of incorporating nature into your own life and that of children, the children you serve and care about, whether they're your own or whether you're students, but in any setting. That's what I'm thinking about today. And I think if you want to put any questions or comments in the chat, between Amy and I, we'll try to be alert to those. I'm happy to be interrupted. I'm happy to, just to do what's most helpful to you today. And I think maybe another way that you can help us both is if you, whatever it was that had attracted you to today's webinar, maybe put a word or two or a question or something like that in the chat so that I can be guided by that a little bit as well. And Amy, if you want to start the slides, will I still also be able to see the chat?
I believe that you should be able to. I'll have the chat box open on the side. I'm also,
okay.
I will also moderate the chat box as well. And as things come up, if people post questions, I will politely interrupt you and add that in if I feel like it's appropriate. I just wanted to give a reminder to everybody to just make sure that we're all really good at this now, but just make sure that your mic is turned off while we start. So,
and I now see, so Sophie Marshall joined too, another participant in the Nature-Based Leadership Institute. Great to see you as well. Okay, go ahead, please.
All right, here we go.
Well, Amy's doing that. Some of you know that I love thinking in terms of the ecology of hope. And so that was basically the title of this presentation, but with a real emphasis on creating environments in which children can thrive, learn and thrive. Okay, so there we go. How connecting children with nature helps them learn and thrive. So that's the deal. Go ahead. Next slide. I thought I'd give you all a little context. That is my son, my daughter-in-law. There is the 3-year-old, not quite 4, and my grandson, who's now 7. This was last year in the garden. They had just come with me into my garden and we had picked some food, and Alden is looking down. Alden's the 7-year-old, looking at a monarch caterpillar in his hands. They're a family that does a lot of raising successfully of the monarchs from the caterpillar stage. So that's what's happening there. And that's actually the view up the hill behind me where I'm sitting now. That's the barn on the land where I have the good fortune to live. And those daffodils are blooming right now. Anthony says he can't see the slides. So I'll have to see how that can be helped.
Should go to the next one, Cheryl? Yeah.
Yes, please. It hasn't moved. Click on Amy button. Oh, okay, great. And so these are just some of the guiding principles that I stand on in terms of all of my life work. Throughout my career, I have focused on children, community, and the environment. With just a real deep commitment to and concern for the well-being of all people and all of the life and living support systems that we depend on. And so you can see, and actually in this time, again, this extraordinary time of the pandemic, it's becoming more and more clear to everyone that human health and well-being are inextricably linked to the health of the planet's existence. So we're learning that in some profound new ways with people throughout the world being touched by this particular phenomenon. But on the positive side, you know, the extent to which we can be in a natural setting, and this is in cities, this is in any kind of environment, we can make sure that we have the opportunity to directly engage with other life forms. And so I don't want people to think we have to get out into the wilderness. We don't. We can make sure that we've got access to natural systems and natural elements wherever we are. And in doing so, it enhances our own health, our own well-being, and helps to nourish our creativity and compassion, our empathy, our respect for other life forms. And so, how to help this happen more systemically for more and more people in making the connections with the natural world a priority, we end up contributing to healthy lives, our own health and well-being, those of our family members and friends, those of people throughout the world, and again, all of the life that supports us all. So going ahead, Amy, next slide. And I think, again, I said this before some of you joined the call, but I think part of what I hope happens today is that this gives you even more affirmation if you're already making nature-based experiences a priority for those in your lives, whether you're teachers, whether you're administrators, whether you're doing that as a parent or a community member. I'm focusing a lot on children. You'll see the very last statement, a couple of statements there, but I believe through my heart, my whole being, that healthy communities are the foundation for peace in the world, and that healthy communities begin with healthy children. And so what is it that healthy children need? Well, one of the things they need is to be able to play. And I would insert, as I've been thinking a lot about what's going on now, I'm a school board member here in southern Vermont, and the challenges, of course, that we're seeing, teachers, many at home with their own children at home, trying to teach while they're also taking care of their kids. I want people to know that one of the best things we can do for all of us, including our children as they learn in these times, is literally to incorporate opportunities outdoors to play, because the learning is going to be natural, it's going to be in context. I actually hope one outcome of this period is that our schools, when they open again as buildings, do even more incorporating of nature-based experiences. I think this time gives us an opportunity maybe for many more people to see the value of incorporating nature-based play and learning in children's everyday lives. Amy, you're going to be able to share this with people afterwards, and they're going to have access to these slides, right? So
yes. Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
So I'm not going to, we'll not have to go through all of this in great detail. Yeah. Because I'd love to get questions and comments too. And you're monitoring those as you multitask?
I'm trying to.
Oh, okay. That's great. No worries. I'm excited. So anyway, this is just for me, a useful definition, because I want people to, again, remember that we have a combination of structure and open-ended, unstructured play and learning for children, and it can be in any kind of setting. I think we're understanding more and more, literally, how having children create the rules, the structures, the stories, and be their own leaders outdoors, working collaboratively with one another. All of that, again, enhances their own health and well-being. It strengthens their cognitive abilities, their mental health, and all. So moving ahead then.
Some of you know this, but when I first founded the Children in Nature Network with Richard Louv, as long ago now as 2006, Rich being the author of Last Child in the Woods and a great many other outstanding books. When we first created that nonprofit with our sole purpose to really reconnect children with nature throughout the world to the extent that we can, I knew that, and he did as well. We really needed to be able to stand on the evidence. So we began pulling together all the current research. And as I read and tried to figure out what the big ideas were, it became very clear. And this is, again, 2006, 2007, that we could summarize the benefits to children, that they would tend to be happier, healthier, and smarter, that all kinds of things having to do with their mental health and well-being, their reduced stress and anxiety, their capacity to be more self-disciplined, all those things tie into being happier. And the obvious fact that when children are outdoors, they tend to be more physically active. Whoa, what a concept. And that in turn helps to reduce obesity and other kinds of health risks. And then the smarter piece is the cognitive flexibility that's created, the executive functioning skills that are enhanced. It's a whole range of things. And so that's what the evidence was showing. And certainly it was interesting. I started the first kind of research summary, annotated bibliography of research, and the first time I published it, there were 20 really good studies that I was looking at. Well, moving ahead to where we are in 2020 now, we've helped contribute to an amazing expansion in the quality of research and the quantity. And now the Children in Nature Network has a research library that you can all access. I hope you do. And there are now more than 1,000 studies there that you could draw on that are summarized. And most often you can have access to them unless they're behind a firewall. But we wrote a description just to summarize each study to make sure you could get the essence of it, whether you could read the full study without having to pay for it. Next slide.
There we go. You're good.
It would be good if I remembered what I was doing. So here are a few of the other kind of highlights from some of the major studies. One of the names that you'll hear, and I'll emphasize later, but the Ming, Dr. Francis is her first name, Ming, M-I-N-G, Kuo, K-U-O, is really one of the leaders in this area and one of the people who has done the most to contribute to the rigor and the increase in both quality and quantity of studies that we can learn from and stand on. So she and her colleague, Andrea Faber-Taylor, produced some of the first and again most rigorous studies that would let us understand that even when children have the symptoms or characteristics of attention deficit disorder, they are served if they are outdoors as much as might be possible. I'm not going to go through all of these, so let's go to the next slide. It's just, these are all indicators of children's health and well-being being supported by access to the natural world on a regular basis. Looking at the second bullet on this slide that I'm reading right now, and I think you're looking at, children are less stressed, more self-disciplined, and have better social relationships. If I think about, again, the troubling and confusing and somewhat scary aspects of this point in time, I just am so heartened by the helpfulness, the calming nature of being outdoors in the natural world. So, we've known that for a long time, but the evidence gets stronger and stronger, that we're not making this up, but these really are benefits that serve all of us of any age, but especially children. The last bullet on this page, outdoor classrooms and nature-based education, is associated with significant student gains in academic achievement. This is a new study that came out in 2019, and I'm going to draw on it pretty heavily for a couple of minutes because it is so significant. There's some new things that we're able to say now as a result. So if you're looking at the slide that says academic outcomes, the first statement that this study makes compellingly clear is that incorporating nature within school-based instruction improves academic achievement when compared to traditional non-nature-based instruction. That's really, really powerful. And what's so important about this study, and I've given you the citation there so that you can find it on your own. It's open source. It's not hard to get a hold of. Typically, historically, most of the evidence we were drawing on was looking at relationships, correlations. These two things seem to be associated with one another, and they allow us to say there's a tendency for us to be able to state this, that this is the outcome associated with that kind of thing. So outdoor experiences were associated with enhanced academic outcomes. Well, Ming Kuo and her two colleagues, Kathy Jordan and Michael Barnes, really did a systematic review of the literature, and they pulled everything together. And for the first time, we're seeing rigorous academic scholars saying there's causality here. We can say there's a cause and effect relationship between children being outside, learning and playing, and improved academic outcomes. That's a very big deal, and we've had to be so cautious for a long time. It's just pretty exciting that this is coming true so clearly, and in a variety of different settings. So, is there a question from anybody? I should stop for a second.
I didn't have a question, Cheryl. This is Amy, but I had a comment, and I'm just wondering, since this study is so new and so powerful, I'm just wondering how this information might be considered as we reintegrate, as children and teachers and school communities reintegrate into the start of a new but radically different school year, whenever that may start back up. And I know,
right,
as nature-based educators, a lot of us are thinking that and are poised and ready to help in whatever way that we might be able to, but it's more of a question. It's more of a kind of like an I wonder, I guess.
Right, and I think that's really important, and I hope that is one of the positive results of this extraordinary time. But I think one of the things, for the most part, we know that there are skeptics. We know that some school administrators are not as aboard as others of us are with this, and so this particular study is so significant because it is comprehensive and clear. Yeah. And so anyway, let it be. I think to reinforce what I've said a couple of times now, I hope this gives you more confidence to as we do return to schooling again, and people will have seen, those who can will have seen the benefits to children and families from more time outdoors in nature during this period, and we can be reinforced by that and bring it to the process of teaching and learning even more in a more integrated fashion as we go forward. So Ming, in this next slide, 8 Pathways, is summarizing what it is about nature-based experiences that help contribute to, and again, this now a cause and effect relationship to the academic outcomes. And again, I often talk about so many other benefits, but I think at this time when schooling is different, when our children are not in the buildings right now and they're not with their teachers in their classrooms, this allows us to get even more clarity about what it is about the nature-based experiences that can help make traditional schooling come to life in even more powerful ways when we start again. So you can see here, attention is enhanced, stress is reduced. Kids are better able to self-discipline, self-regulate. Their interest, their motivation, their engagement, all of that is enhanced. And again, the power of physical activity and fitness. And she's got just a few more here that she's referring to again.
Mm-hmm. Yep, I turned the slide.
Okay, great. Again, as I take a deep breath, thinking about the literal calm and peace that comes from these kinds of experiences, and the cooperation, the collaboration that's so important. And I think this looks like it's a different concept compared to the others, but she is talking about in the paper the importance of the loose parts, those things that children can pick up and move around and invent with, create, all of that kind of thing. So again, you see the attribution to the article, making it easier for you to find it. And these are a couple of other things that the three authors summarize in the paper as well, that it's now clear that more really is better. Even though I'm one who always says experiences in nature it can be transformative at any point in one's life. There can be singular, extraordinary experiences that again change people's lives in positive ways. Having said that, from the perspective of what enhances cognitive achievement, school-based learning, the more nature-based instruction gets the more positive results, the more impressive results. And so much of our instructional approach, using nature as our natural setting, the context, and when in place-based education is very similar, often incorporating more of culture, which is great as well. In both cases, we do as much as we can hands-on, student-centered, activity-based, discussion-based, project-based. So you'll get good results with those kinds of approaches. We just get some additional benefits when we do that in the context of nature-based teaching and learning.
Cheryl, there is a question here that's asking about a minimum time that shows up in the research that kids should be engaged in this type of learning to see results. Did they have time, like an hour, 2 hours, or so many hours a week to see results?
There's not. They're not going to, the researchers are not going to specify exactly, but I've seen some data that indicate 20 minutes a day can be helpful, but again, more is better. So hours are better than minutes.
Sure, yeah. Yeah.
And at the same time, you've got to be realistic and do what you can. Another interesting related area of research I've been looking at recently has to do with unschooling and homeschooling, where there is often a lot more of the nature-based experience going on for kids. And some reports will indicate that when those children do end up in an academic setting, when they get older, they may come in with some of the skills not as honed as children the same age who've gone through an environment with more emphasis on let's say computation and reading skills, but within a very short period of time, because the homeschoolers, unschoolers, two different things, but those who were not in the traditional school environment have so much more agency, so much more sense of self-efficacy, so many more skills of collaboration and problem solving that they end up kind of soaring ahead after a particularly short period of time. Thinking about some of the elements, I'm now on design principles from David Sobel. You all are very familiar with him, many of you. Some of you have taken courses from him. David is now Professor Emeritus at Antioch University, New England. Any of his books are a great resource for people. As I think about those of you who are not doing as much design of nature-based experiences as yet, this particular book, Childhood and Nature Design Principles for Educators, is a gem. And these are the categories from adventure to animal allies, hunting and gathering. They all help create the more structured nature-based experiences for kids, for learners, that can be helpful in combination with those that are unstructured, where the kids are taking more of the leadership role. And I think another area that David's made a big contribution are in these developmental stages, where when in the earliest years, one of the most important things we can be doing with young children is to have them develop a love of the natural world, all of the living and the non-living elements, which are a way to develop compassion and empathy. The middle school years, kids tend to like to really be able to range out there, go farther. That's the classic fort building, structure building, adventure building kind of phase. Not to say that we can't do all of these at every age. And then again, the teens tending to like to work together. And it's a time where they're doing even more to get out of self and help to try to make the world a better place. Again, that takes place at all ages, but in an age-appropriate way.
Mm-hmm.
And then I'm going to close with some thoughts about how this is all interconnected with having a healthy planet. And we know, and once again, the evidence is so clear, that when children grow up learning about and learning to love the living world, the natural world around them, they are the most likely to grow up and take action to take care of it. And so, as we look ahead for generations to come, with 7 generations and more, one of the most fundamental things any of us can do to help nourish, care for the earth so that it will be supporting all of life, people and other life forms, for many, many, many generations to come, is to build in that love from the earliest of years. And that's tied to caring for one another, family bonds. It's tied to caring for place. And an interesting aspect of this is that the intimacy, the reverence, the appreciation that grows from caring for the earth isn't, we can't just tell people to care. So knowledge is important, but it's not enough for people to, in fact, take action to care for the earth. And so it's, once again, I would say this kind of commitment to care for the earth can actually happen at any point in a person's life. Having said that, nearly to a person, those who had these experiences in childhood continue with that ethic of care throughout their lives. And we need that more than ever.
Mm-hmm.
So here, I've got a couple of more things that are just consistent with what I've just said. But here's back to one of the question that was about time a few minutes ago. So I've just jumped 2 slides ahead, what the evidence suggests about care for the earth, where it says at the top, experiences designed to foster commitment and action are most successful when they occur over an extended period of time.
Mm-hmm.
So time matters again. And then those people who are strongly connected to the natural world, again, tend to have high levels of self-esteem, well-being, just simply are back again happier and healthier and do better in all the areas of their lives. I think I probably next have a couple of resources. So from the Children in Nature Network website, the web address is up there. A couple of the documents that I've taken pictures of the covers of, 2 that are especially helpful to parents, although certainly helpful to educators as well. But Together in Nature, the one that shows on the upper left there, really talks about the ways to strengthen family bonds through experiences outdoors in nature. And the one called Thriving Through Nature really emphasizes how nature-based experiences contribute to children's development of executive functioning skills, which are so directly related to success in school. And the Nature Club for Families toolkit in the middle there is just encouragement for folks to, when we can, again, get outdoors in nature with other families for all the fun and support that provides for each of us. And then the 2 documents on the right are, one, Connecting is a summary of the larger document, Home to Us All, where about a year or so ago I pulled together with people from throughout the world, but a pretty comprehensive synthesis of what is it that does contribute to people taking action to care for the earth. And again, it begins with those nature-based experiences where we really connect where we're not disassociated, but we really learn to respect and learn to love the natural world all around us. And then the last slide, or second to the last, I think, because Rich Louv has contributed so much to, I think, this whole, in the last 20 or so years, the whole growing movement to connect and reconnect people of all ages with the natural world. I've just shown his most recent books, Last Child in the Woods, really having done so much to launch the whole children and nature movement. He published that book in 2005. The Nature Principle came next, where he really enhanced and expanded those ideas to show the benefits to people of all ages. Vitamin N, if you haven't seen it, is a great resource with literally hundreds of activity ideas in it. So it's good for educators, it's good for healthcare providers and others. And then our Wild Calling came out last November. And here Rich is talking about really how connecting with animals can transform our lives. It's really consistent with the whole theme about the benefits to nature from nature experiences in our daily lives. But he also is making the case for that kind of connection, really helping all of us to nurture and sustain healthy environments for, again, all species. And then for those of you who don't know how to reach me, although it's pretty easy to reach me, there's a couple of email addresses and the contact information. So now let's just see what some of the questions and comments are, and I'm happy to co-think and reflect with you guys.
So Cheryl, we've got one question on people's experiences between the gaps of nature-based learning versus academic learning, and how to get parents on board with more nature-based learning. Do you have suggestions or ideas about that? Especially now, I know that's a big one right now. I had a long conversation with some people the other day about this.
I'm thinking about our friends and colleagues at Sharon Elementary, who are here in Vermont, had been one of the few places where nature-based experiences were integrated pre-K through sixth grade. And they had great success bringing parents out and administrators out to see what was actually going on with the children learning in the woods or learning by the stream or learning, wherever they were outdoors. Because when you see it in action, the results are so compelling. I think it's going to have to be a combination of things like the studies, plural, but this one of Ming Kuo's and Kathy Jordan's and Michael Barnes is especially helpful as a summary. So people are going to need a combination of succinct information coupled with direct observation and experience. Yeah. And I know that that's something that as children are home right now with families, and we've had a lot of this coming up for us with the almost 50 teachers that we work with throughout central Vermont, is now that the children are home with their parents and facilitating and supporting their learning, how can we support parents to get out the door with their children on the days that they might have Forest Friday or outdoor classroom day? And it really does come down to that experiential opportunity for the parents as well. And also for the parents to have time, have the space and the letting go to enjoy that time with their children. Something that I've seen really successful when school was in session was just like what Cheryl was saying, were days when parents are always invited to come out on our forest days, but also special days, maybe on a Saturday morning or a Sunday afternoon when the outdoor classrooms are open and the children have maybe prepared something and teachers are present. And it's a way for families to come and tour the outdoor classroom and have that experience with their children in a space that their children are comfortable and familiar with. And when schools have supported those kind of outside of school hour exploratory days with the students and with the families, that parent participation and understanding and support for this type of learning in the public school has gone up, has increasingly gone up. That's great. What was the first half of that question? What was the concept about the gap? I'm not sure I heard that clearly.
Gap between nature-based learning and academic learning. So the emphasis and the focus on academics and bridging that gap with parents especially if it's already happening in a school. I think that's what Katie was asking, or no, Liza was asking.
Let me go back to the very strong statement in the article by Ming Kuo and colleagues, and that is that when looking at all of the studies accumulated now to date, that nature-based learning contributes more to traditional educational outcomes than a traditional classroom without nature-based. So the academic achievement is higher when those skills, whether it's math or science or language arts, communication, problem solving, period, all of the academic outcomes are enhanced when the children get the opportunities to develop their learning in the very real, meaningful context of a nature-based environment.
Yeah. There's a bunch of other really great questions here, Cheryl.
Yay!
So Juliet Robertson is here. If those of you don't know Juliet, she's from across the pond. And,
hey, Juliet, wonderful.
and, she just made a comment. She said, also talk about math outdoors or science outside so that it's clear that it's not something different, but the same academics are being taught in a different and experiential way. So making sure you're using that language, science, math, literacy, outdoors. That's what Juliet has to share.
That's great. And I would encourage, it's Juliet Robertson, and I'd encourage people to look for her books. Great resources.
Yeah. Dirty Teaching and Messy Maths. Many of you have those as resources.
Great.
There's a question here from Kristen, and she's wondering if there's any school models that adhere to these ideas through middle school and beyond. She'd love to do research on those. So,
well, do a bit of a search. I haven't tried, early childhood is where the greatest growth has taken place. But I remember there is a book that was published by the Center for Eco-Literacy in Berkeley a few years ago called Smart by Nature, and there are profiles of some of successful schools. They tend to take a little bit more of an science and energy related focus, but there are some nature-based schools in there. I haven't tried to look recently, but I know if you do a search, you're likely to find some coming up.
Yeah, and in my experience with looking for research or any kind of data on that age, it's mostly the reactive research on we've gotten this far, this age range needs help, and so here is a project where we've taken these adolescents out into the wilderness for extended periods of time for therapy. So a lot of that research that I have found has been on wilderness therapy. So it's great to hear of other resources that might be out there that are not reactive. There's a really great question here about from Melissa. She's asking, are there any suggested resources about nature-based special education, particularly looking for resources targeted for neurodiverse children who need support working on motor planning, including ideation, challenges, and open-ended settings and social skills?
I am hearing about those, and I'm thinking there was a participant in the Nature-Based Leadership Institute with me and the others at Antioch maybe 2 years ago now, an educator who works, actually there's more than one educator who works with autistic and other differently learning young people. And the anecdotal evidence is very strong that it's helpful. I don't think the research is quite caught up to that, but I hear it over and over again from folks. if anybody else who's in this conversation has an idea or a resource to put it in the chat, Amy can.
Yep. Yeah, and there's one that just popped up. Kaylin from Over the Border in Ontario just shared. There's a book called Forced School and Autism.
Great. That's
very specific, and that can be. She just dropped the link into our chat box. Thank you, Kaylin. That's really helpful.
Oh, wonderful. Yeah, I just know that's been growing, but that I haven't looked at it specifically. So thank you so much for that.
Yeah, and as far as documentation like that, I know very few examples of that, but I do know of teachers here in the Central Vermont area who have been working with us for 10 years now, who have had students in their classrooms who use wheelchairs, who have learning differences, and have these types of just learning differences in their life and how they are in school as how they are outside. So if you're more curious about that, please feel free to contact me, and I'm happy to put you in touch with those teachers in particular. It's not research-based, but it's more example-based of how they have made nature-based learning and these experiences accessible for all of their students throughout an entire school year.
Looks like we have time for one or two other comments and questions.
Yeah.
And then, yeah.
Oh yeah, Harriet is suggesting Balanced and Barefoot by Angela Hanscom. Is a great, that's a great resource for people as well.
Right. Yep, she's very good. Thank you.
Yeah.
As you wait for or look for any other comments, I just want to say to folks, first of all, thank you all for joining in. Feel free to reach out at any time. I have to apologize for my internet here in southern Vermont, which is why we were having some problems. I'm glad it worked for me to get on the phone. And Amy, I'm glad you were able to show folks the slides, and they'll have access to that going forward. But this is, my internet is unstable here.
Well, it's one of the reasons why we choose to live where we live.
Fair enough. Fair enough.
And that is okay. And we're all, as one person dropped in the chat box, Liza Lowe, she says, we're so good at flexibility and changing and pivoting right now. We're pretty good at non-attachment. So thank you so much, Cheryl. Does anyone else have any questions for Cheryl before we say goodbye? Yeah, everyone's saying thank you. And Cheryl, you know, I just want to reflect back with you and with the rest of the group as I've seen parts of this presentation before. I know for a lot of us, some of this information is familiar, but at the same time, it feels all brand new to me right now. Some of those slides and that information that you presented, I am looking at very, very differently. I am hearing it and I'm feeling it differently. And I'm turning the wheels in my head of what does this mean now? What does this mean in 3 months and 4 months and a year from now? So just want to thank you for bringing us back to the basics and sharing your research with us. Your work that you've done with the Children in Nature Network is such an incredible resource, and it's a great place for people to access this information and go back to those baseline reasons of why we're doing this work, and we're all looking at everything through a different lens right now. So thank you very much for helping us do that today.
Well, I want to add to that. Thank you. Just as I think about the fact that for most children and youth right now, they're not going to be in the kind of school setting that they had been in. And that's not all bad. I just think about the power of how much learning is taking place when people can be outdoors, doing real things, making real projects. We know, I had a mother ask me a couple of days ago, what can I do with my teenagers? And I said, well, this time of year, one of the things you can do is get the guys, or 2 boys, to design and build their own either raised beds or containers, She happened to be in a city. So what could she do with her sons where they could grow some things but do it from absolutely start to finish, and was reinforcing the importance of soil. If you're going to grow your own food, make sure that the soil is healthy. And all of that combined, we use every kind of, back to what Juliet was saying. So it's math, it's science, it's the arts, it's everything meaningful and real. And when I think about children and teens outdoors now, everything that they're experiencing is an opportunity to actually apply what they might have been getting in a more armchair format in school. So we've got a lot of opportunities here, and I am firmly believing that this is not a waste of time in any sense. It's going to tend to be a more meaningful and empowering way for children to thrive, grow, and learn. So again, thanks everybody. Thank you for what you're each doing. Thank you for your interest. And Amy, thank you for the invitation to join you all today.
Thank you, Cheryl. Thank you for giving us your time today. It means so much to us. And yeah, hopefully we'll get to chat again. There's a lot of great people on this call and a lot of ideas flying around and connections being made. So I'm sure we'll all see each other again in some other virtual platform, and hopefully in person very soon. So thank you.
Absolutely. Thanks, everybody.
All right. Take care, everybody.